projected for the future in 2080. So we're looking at 60 years from now and then 30 years before now. So we're looking at a annual mean temperature. So that the average temperature in Moncton is 5.5 degrees. That was in the 1990s, not too long ago. Kind of like a similar day we're having today. And in the future, we're looking at worst case scenario, 8.5 RCP, if you know what that means. They're looking at a 5-degree hike. So on average, the day will be 10 degrees. So you see the temperature's rising, but other things that affect decisions that we make as we're trying to battle climate change and infrastructure. On the precipitation side, we're looking at an addition of 12% more centimeters of snow or rain or precipitation over the course of the year, similar to the other cities, 12, 13, 12. So, you know, more, even though it's getting warmer, we're going to get more precipitation. But it's important to know that we're not getting more days of precipitation. We're not getting it stretched out. We're getting it in more hard batches. If you were awake the last 2 days, New Brunswick was hit by a heavy rain storm that lasted for quite a bit of time. But it hadn't rained for much time before that, and it's probably not going to rain for weeks for now. So we're getting it all in a batch, and it causes problems. So how do we affect that? So other things that are important to know is that, well, let's take on the precipitation. If you look at the snow days that it's snowing, in Moncton, usually it's 63 days per year, it's going to go down to 36. So how do you get more precipitation but less days that it's going to snow? That means you're going to get more snow in these 36 days that you were going to get in 63. So it means you're getting more snow per snowfall or more rain per rainfall. That's a concern. And then let's look at the heat. So if you like a 30-degree heat day, some people love it. They hit the beach. Some people hide from it. It's difficult. So right now we are in the 90s. I guess in Moncton, we were averaging almost 5 days that are 30 degrees or more. That's going to go up to 43 days per year. That doesn't even seem to make sense to me. But even if it goes up to 20, which is a medium type of, it's a lot of days that are hot. And in the 90s, we had no days that were 35 degrees or over. 35 degrees without humidity. And we're going to get now maybe 7 days of over 35-degree heat in the Moncton area. If you like the heat, good for you. If you're a grower, maybe that's good for you. But for other people, it could be a problem. It's something we need to look at. So it's just and if wherever you live, you can get the feel of that. So it was just to put things into context. Now, we're talking municipal green infrastructure today. I come from the engineering side. We had 2 great speakers this morning. So similar to what they were saying, what green infrastructure is, it's some sort of measure that utilizes plant or soil systems, so earth. They could be permeable pavements too. Stormwater collection that infiltrates, evaporates, anything that reduces flows to storm systems or surface water. So I'll be talking today of ponds and swales. Now, municipal green infrastructure can also be natural options that are existing already. So I like to take a minute to discuss for municipalities or engineers that are out there, when you're evaluating a client's or a municipality's goals in keeping stormwater runoffs low, we often seem to think that a forested area or parcel of land is just future development for something. So trees will be cut and asphalt will be added on top of the trees type of thing. But you might want to think of it as these already exist. They already have a purpose. Wetlands, forests, dunes, natural systems. You might want to tabulate those to keep some of them instead of building something new. Or you could build something new that's artificial, man-made or human-made, I should say, including what we've seen today, rain gardens, naturalized swales, permeable pavements, green streets, green roofs, urban trees, stormwater ponds. So these are you know, artificial type options that mimic natural options. And often these natural human-made solutions tend to be less expensive than technical approaches or hard engineering approaches. So it's good to know that you might save a bit of money here too, although you might say that they're not as durable as a nice, good concrete structure. But in the end, you realize that your concrete structure is, as the first day, it's the best day of the concrete structure, and it deteriorates over time. So you'll need to replace or replenish it at one point, while a green natural infrastructure, its first day is its worst day. And then it grows and appreciates with time. And I'll show you concrete examples, to use the term concrete, in the photos in my case study. So I said I'd talk a bit about regulations. Well, in New Brunswick, regulations for stormwater runoff comes through the Clean Water Act, which is administered by the provincial government. And these regulations are somewhat vague, difficult to enforce. It's not black and white rules and regulations, so you need to adapt to those. And the government of New Brunswick is responsible for stormwater runoff in rural areas that are under local service districts, so that are not municipalized. While in urban areas, municipalities that are rural or urban, municipalities can adopt their own laws regarding storm water. Examples where I used to work, the city of Dieppe or the city of Moncton, you can find guidelines on their websites that are open to all, that have guidelines on runoff for stormwater and guidelines on even naturalized ponds, which I'll be talking about. So how to build them, how to manage them. And these cities also have a net zero bylaw, which is a strict rule that you need to, any new development in the city can't produce more stormwater runoff than was there before the development. So you need to calculate these. And what happens is, once you pave a big parking lot, you need to add some sort of feature to hold back the stormwater runoff after a big rain, so that it doesn't flow out quicker than it did before you had development. So these are rules that are put into place, but those are run by the municipalities where the residents live. I said I'd talk communication. I like to add a couple other terms to that, which is collaboration, communication, knowledge. Very important if you're a municipality or you're working with a municipality, if they're your clients. Well, again, I'm using my example from 20 years ago, where you need to see before you believe. So in other words, making decisions today on a rain garden or a stormwater retention pond, when you're investing money, you want to make sure it works. So you'd like to see something nearby that you can focus on and prove that it is workable. And the conferences like today does exactly that. We're seeing examples that are regional, local, that have similar climates to ours with the winter. If they work there, then likely they'll work at your place. Easier to talk to your mayor or council to get funding for certain types of projects that might not go ahead if you're thinking it's a risk. Also in the communication side is know the challenges of each stakeholder when you're building a project. So first of all, you got to think of your citizens, because this infrastructure, if it's a stormwater pond or a rain garden, will be next to these homes. So these homeowners, how are they reacting, or how are they going to live with and share their space with this green infrastructure? Councillors and mayors at the city, they want accomplishments. They want a nice green project, and they want to stamp their name on it and say that, look, this is what I've accomplished while I was here, and I'm looking for another term, type of thing. So at the same time, we want to help them accomplish things, or you want to make sure that the project you're putting into place is going to work in the end. And also the administrators, who's taking care of that once it's built and the ribbon is cut and everything's good. It needs a bit of maintenance. So the employees that are going to maintain, and I'll show you in my case study how, discussing with them, they give you ideas on how we can make it easier to maintain so that you have a better chance of having success in your project. Also, it's important to look at building these green infrastructures as an investment in time, not a cost, because you can add benefits with these. And speaking like an investment, meaning that later on it will bring even more than it does today. It's not easy to pay or invest money into new infrastructure where you're not too sure how it's going to work out. And finally, another tip that I have that I've learned is to build trust. So start with smaller projects. I'm going to present you a big project right away. But we've seen smaller projects earlier today in the talks. So begin with a small project, doesn't cost too much money. People are reticent or not too sure, so and make sure it works. And once it does, then you move up to bigger projects. You've gained a trust from investors or the municipality and whatnot. Work with NGOs. They have people that love to do the work. If you saw the people presenting this morning, they love their work and they're looking to help. So take advantage of them being there, and they're part of your community and they can do a lot of the legwork for yourself. And then approach governments with this help, the NGO help, the citizens that they want. Serge and myself just recently, for example, we met with New Brunswick Department of Transportation and Infrastructure on a coastal protection of the roadway. We're looking at something a little more green than just the old riprap rock. And they actually came out and met with us, and they are willing to put a first project together that they're not too sure of, how it's going to work, because it's not their usual just dumping the rock there. So they are open to something new, something small, and the communities is behind it. It's part of their strategic plan to fix this area. So together we're working on an option that might help us in the future to do a bigger project, but really to gain the trust of DTI on this type of work, and that we can move further and do more with that. So sometimes you need to start slow to build up later on. We've talked about collaboration already. I'll skip that, and I'll go to our case study with the time we have left. I'll be talking about a naturalized stormwater retention pond built in Dieppe, New Brunswick. So you see it here, the ponds are there. This is all new land development. It's actually an industrial park. Many acres that had forest on there. And over here was a horse track, so a racing track for harness racing that the city acquired. And then we used part of the berm of the horse track to build the berm of some of the ponds. So this is man-made retention ponds. If you've been in Dieppe, this is Dieppe Boulevard. Here's Aquatic Street. The pool is here, Aquatic Center. And this is a walking trail that goes all around the ponds. So I'll be talking about that. So this was built, started in 2002. I was a project engineer then at Cité Dieppe. And I had a question this morning. It wasn't my idea, this pond. I was fortunate enough to work on it. I will credit my boss at the time, Jacques, the engineer, who had a vision that we could build something grandiose enough, invest in something for the long term that would help, one, the stormwater and the regulations we had around that, and two, could help the community itself by building something green, pleasant for people to go through. And I'll show you what it looks like 17 years later. And that's what I wish I had 20 years ago, a case study that was local, that would show me before and after, and the success it has to help me make decisions, help my mayor and council make decisions on investing, a lot of money, but in the long run, you're getting the bang for your buck. So we talked collaboration earlier. On this project, we had the City of Dieppe. We had an engineering consulting firm, at the time was ADI. We had landscape architects, a consulting firm, BDA, Basic Design Associates from the Sussex area was working with us, which was very important. The contractor that was building it, and the local residents who live right nearby these ponds. Let's look at our first plan that's made by a landscape architect. And then I'm going to show you an engineering plan that shows a little different. You'll see that the outlooks or the train of thought we have either way. So at first, All of this is Champlain Street. The airport in Dieppe is here. This is Dieppe Boulevard. The pool is here now. These are the ponds I'm talking about. So this is a concept sketch. There's a natural brook that runs here, a little brook. And then all this new area that we're going to develop with pavements and roofs, industrial, will all run off into this little brook. So ideally, or what would eventually usually would happen in the old days, you just dump the stormwater to the brook. It would erode it. It would bring a lot of pollutants and sediments. That would be, it would destroy that brook. Now we're protecting it, but we're also protecting everything else from that too. So on this project, we've incorporated, you see the greenery. So the landscape architect shows, look, we are keeping trees in these green areas. We have walking trails incorporated for people who are working in the park and go out for a walk at lunchtime. In blue here, we have, instead of running all the stormwater to the road in a pipe, they've taken all the lands, the properties, and they've drained it backwards into a swale. So saves us on building a bigger pipe. We're running it through a ditch. And this ditch is green, it's grassed. It helps to slow the water down and bring the pollutants in. And then we're building these big naturalized ponds here. And we also have other ponds near the pool, which are not as big and these are a wet pond. The water always stays in it. We have dry ponds here and here that are naturalized. And we also have a dry pond in this area that is not naturalized. I call it the ugly pond. It's just a big hole in the ground with a bit of grass and a nice big black fence around it. So it doesn't do much other than catch the water. While this pond is the ultimate, which has walking trails and greenery and aquatic plants to help not just slow the water down, but to filtrate it as we go. So remember this nice plan drawn by the landscape architects, which is very important.
Serge, you have about 15 minutes left.
Awesome. So I'm going to skip this here. And here's the engineering plan. So you notice the difference? A lot of gray, a lot of parking lots. We're looking at maximizing the area for commercial, and some of it's been built already. So you can imagine this was a forest before, and now it's a pavement parking lot, and it's all going to drain in this pond. And how that works, zoom in on the pond, is all the storm water collected in the pipes now, instead of running straight to the brook, starts in this first pond, which is a settlement pond. It's deep. So the water comes in fast, hits the pond, slows down, all the big sediments fall on the bottom. This needs to be maintained every 7 years, pumped out. Then it slowly runs over a little weir, a little dam, and starts in pond 2, slowly makes its way through aquatic plants, and then is stopped here at another check dam. Then it runs through a small pipe, pond number 3, slowly meanders through, depositing sediments, filtrating itself through the aquatic plants, and then another dam through pond number 4, our polishing pond. And then a final check dam runs through, you don't see it here, but over into a pipe, a small pipe, just a little 8-inch pipe, then back to the brook. Then it goes away. So that's the idea from the pond. And here's what I wanted to show you. In 2002, after we built it, some grass started growing around it, natural grasses. And in these black patches, it's a mulch. And in the mulch, we've planted, the landscape architect suggested indigenous trees to be planted in these areas, that they would grow and they would add to the area. The rest was just left wild. And in the middle, hard to see, but we have aquatic plants there. They're in the middle that the water flows through to help purify it. So let's have a look at this area from the next photo. I'm standing on this bridge and I'm taking a picture this way. There's no trees around there, not many there. So here's what it looks like today. You can't even see where I was standing before. This is between ponds 2 and 3. If you look here, here's one of our other bridges where the outfall is. This is our polishing pond. Here's what it looks like today. That's that same bridge. We actually made a better one. You can't even see the pond. The trees are growing. We have picnic tables here, a grassed area. Here's one of our check dams, which holds pond 3 to 4. It runs through a small pipe. The black patches, difficult to see, but they're here. We've planted some small fir trees or whatnot. And then 17 years later, these are the trees that have grown, that were planted, and the other ones were just out of the wild. That's that same pipe coming out. So again, before, after. We have some residential areas in the area. It's just impressive. So imagine in 2002, we invested $300,000 in building the ponds. That's a lot of money. I agree with that. It's a big investment. And even bigger at the time was plantings for almost $100,000 of plants. And as an engineer, 20 years ago, I had trouble, accepting to put so much money in plants and greenery. And if I had seen a presentation like this before at that time, I'd say, oh, well, look what it's going to look like in the future. So some people had a better vision than I did at the time. But look, I knew it made sense. I was hoping it would all work out, and I think it did. And in the end, we have a walking trail. The ponds are here. It's beautifully landscaped. People can use this at all times. And in closing, I just want to show you the brook. So the stream, that's what it looks like. You can hardly see it. It's about 3 meters wide. That's on a dry day, and after a rainfall, it was a big rainfall event, 28 millimeters in a day last year. I took some photos after. That's before and after. You can hardly see because of the shadows, but you can't really tell there's that much more water flowing. Same thing across the other side of the bridge. That's before the rain, and this is after the rain. So you don't notice any erosion. You don't notice any type of debris there. So it's really worked out well. And where the pond, it's the same idea. That's before, and when it rains, the water level comes up. That's that same patch of greenery here. It's in the water. So the pond slowly fills and slowly drains. So in closing, the extra benefits from investing in a stormwater retention pond that is naturalized with some greenery, it's add aesthetics. The multiple use trail that you saw, the nice trail for people to walk, is built wide enough and strong enough to handle heavy equipment. So our public works staff said, oh, I need someplace to get there with my excavator to dig out the pond or to maintain it. Yep, well, these trails are made for that too. So they work both ways. We have rest areas, picnic areas, flora and fauna, so different indigenous plants that are there, and a whole bunch of animals that live there, and either the ducks or even other small animals that are there. We're also protecting the original stream. The brook that was there would have been totally destroyed if we hadn't collected the water beforehand. We're collecting sediments and pollutants. They settle at the bottom of the pond. We clean them every 7 years. And the vegetation filters the water, which returns to the stream in better condition than it would have if you had not done that. So in the end, that's the idea here. It's to show you what the pond looks like. So with the time we have left, Serge, I think we have 10 minutes. It's supposed to be 20. So please, I'm open to questions or anything. So thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks a lot, Serge. That's great. It's really amazing to get those 20 plus years of experience summed up in just a few minutes, but it shows the comfort level you've got and the trust you have in green infrastructure. And this is really an amazing case study. Like you say, people now have that example that you would have liked to have 20 years ago. If you don't mind, there's a couple of comments that came out on the chat I thought were worth sharing. I love these before and after photos. For sure, it proves the point. And then reduces the peak flow hitting the aboiteaux at the river. I imagine the ponds are providing that service there. So I'll invite maybe folks to ask questions in the chat. That's probably the easiest given the amount of time and number of participants. But if you're uncomfortable with that and would rather unmute and ask a question or even make a comment, we're certainly open for that as well. So I'll just monitor the chat, and otherwise feel free to chime in.
It's Julien here, Julien Laurent.
Hi, Julien.
I live in the area. Been living in that area for 10 years, and I will attest that it's a great place for the community. We've brought our kids there when they've been growing up, and feed the ducks. And I think every time the mother-in-law is over to look after the kids, she brings them there too. So no, it's a great little spot.
Merci, Julien.
Thanks for sharing that. Great. John, did you have a question? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Serge, I was wondering what the lost opportunity cost is if that land, say if you could have put that water underground, built buildings and, you know, on top of it.
So certainly it's prime land. It's right next to our industrial park. I say our as if I still work there, but so no, for sure because it was a city-driven project, the vision was there to do this. When it's a private project, when you talk lost opportunity costs, it's more difficult. So you need to force this through regulation, and we've had it in the city of Dieppe too, that zero net policy. So then engineers and the clients or the private developers would then build their type of pond, not necessarily as nice as this, but they'd have to put land aside to actually catch the storm water. So as long as you treat everybody the same, seems to go by a little easier.
But having this in a way, it means that all your industrial park tenants and businesses around really don't have to manage their own stormwater. It's
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Which is great for them, but I mean, they can construct cheaper. But if you want to maximize the territory, in the long term, it might be smart to build more expensively and have, like, say, underneath the parking lots of the stores, have runoff water storage underneath the parking lots.
No, true. It could have been done either way. Here, because it was a city-run project, the city was selling the land after. They wanted to take that burden off their clients, so we focused on this area here. In other areas, yeah, it'd be done lot per lot, and you could actually take advantage of this area like that. But when you're doing it lot per lot, it becomes a private, so then you don't have any green space around for others. So, but no, you're totally right. There's a balance between the two, and this is a choice we made in this area.
And you get more water quality benefits likely this way than through an engineered under parking system.
True, unless you'd build something like we saw in our first presentations this morning, which I found very interesting too.
Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks for bringing that up. There's about 5 minutes left, so I think there's a question in the chat from Izzy, I believe. Is there a water quality monitoring protocol, wildlife surveys, etc., that are happening on the site? Do you know of any, Serge?
So not at the time, but when we first built it, our consulting engineer had done tests before and after, and had realized that the water quality coming out of that pond was better than what was coming in for sure. So we had proof that it was happening and it was doing what it was supposed to do. But since then, I don't know if there's been any monitoring done in that area.
Okay, thanks. We still have a couple of minutes. Any other questions? Did someone want to unmute and ask a question or make a comment or provide examples from your own area? Serge, I was interested, you were talking earlier about, well, even getting to the net zero and the idea of accounting for the ecological services that the natural spaces are providing, even just in terms of water retention. So is that something that's happening? Is that something that's relatively straightforward to integrate into a project?
So not yet, or not when I left the city. It was 7 years ago now, but it's being talked more and more now to incorporate and to include those. But and we had embarked at the time when I was there on an asset management program. So all our assets were, and then we started talking about we should include these as assets too and put a value to them and say, you know, what you need to do. So it was just starting at the time, and because I'm not there anymore, I can't speak to more of that. I will though try to share, if I can, the photos now of the ponds. So the few minutes that's left, is there's nobody speaking, I'll just show you what the other ponds look like. Set here.
That point of valuing its current services also sort of offsets that the lost opportunity of development and whatnot. It kind of makes that calculation, or it makes that accounting perhaps a little more realistic. All right,
Oh no, I agree. So do you see the screen here, the photo?
Yeah, we do.
So you see what it looks like now. So if I zoom out, the industrial park, the buildings are all there. We've kept a lot of greenery around. So the ponds are here, but we have other ponds in this area. So when you zoom in, you see the trees around, how lovely that looks, and that walking trail all around there. But over here next to our pool, we have other ponds. Kind of looks like a big grassed area. So it's not as pretty. And these are dry ponds. The water runs in from here and it's treated through these, just a natural vegetation comes out through another pipe. And this is a big bowl, but it's not as pretty, but it works for the big flood areas. So it's naturalized, but dry. Same with that one. Then my ugly pond is over here, right here. So if I zoom into that one there, so water comes in, fills up, comes out here. There's a big black fence around there, and it's just grass that's cut. It's a big hole in the ground with grass in there. Does what it has to do engineering-wise, but not as pretty. Could have been maybe done differently, and that's more cost-effective. But so that's the choice you have, I guess, on what you can do in that area. So anyway, so nope, this is a fun project, and I'm glad it all worked out.
Well, and
Serge, I was going to say, not ugly pond.
Go ahead,
It's
John.
not just grass. Garbage collects there pretty good too.
Likely, they need to be maintained. I agree.
And with the fence around, no one's going to maintain them.
No, they go once a year, so they cut the grass once a year, and I imagine they'll cut up the garbage, or they should be picking it up, but I'm not sure.
Mulch.
Well, we're on our last minute. Any final words from maybe Serge? Do you want to give us a 50-second inspiration? Let's get green infrastructure going.
Okay, so I'll use Adam Cheeseman's, I really liked what he said. And so I'm an engineer and I love the concrete and the asphalt. Like I mentioned earlier, the green infrastructure has its worst day the day you install it, and then it gets better with time. It appreciates. While a concrete or a gray infrastructure, its best day, it's the first day. And then as time progresses, it degrades in time. So that's one thing I thought was kind of interesting. So anyway, well, thanks for listening.
So green infrastructure is a little bit like a good bottle of wine.
If I drank, I'd probably say yes. So yeah, I'll go with a Coca-Cola instead.
Thank you, Serge. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
For the other breakout rooms I couldn't participate in.